Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are making a little bit of a different card. I am using the Bees and Bonnets Stamps and Dies, All Things New Stamps and Dies, and the Nancy's Lilac Bouquet. I'm also going to bring in, it's the 3D embossing folder. I think it's the Lacy Floral Heart, Lacy Heart. I'll link it below. It's been a while. It's been a while since I have kind of just like stamped and colored something, and that's why I got into card making. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do like a little stamp and coloring kind of scene card. And then I had seen somebody had done like a little vellum like overlay to make like a little trifold card, and I was like, well, that would be adorable, so I'm gonna try to do that. And I will be honest with you, this is probably one of the more frustrating cards that I've made in a really long time. I'm really happy with the way that it turned out, but it was definitely a learning process throughout. So let's get in and talk about what we're doing. So I am stamping my flowers at the bottom. You can absolutely stamp these and then die cut them out and then layer them on top of each other. I just decided to mask them because for me that is just as easy. So I stamped it in the bottom right, and then I also stamped it on some Eclipse masking paper. I trimmed out, not the whole thing, just the section that I needed, and then I rotated the stamp and I am going to stamp it in the bottom left. So this is going to fill up the entirety of the bottom of my card. And then I am going to grab a couple of the butterflies from All Things New, and then the Bees and Bonnets also has bees and butterflies, but they are just slightly smaller than the other butterflies. So because these are on a smaller scale, it allows us to create a little bit of depth. So it looks like some of the butterflies are closer and some of the butterflies are further away. And so I'm just stamping this all in our intense black ink because I am going to be doing some Copic coloring. So I don't know if any of you guys are in the same boat as I am. Like if you have younger kids, or if you can remember back to when you had younger kids. So with all of the holiday things going on, our schedule of things has been with the kids home, winter break, and like daycare being closed and celebrating the holidays. So when I was doing this card, I actually stamped out 3 of them. Not because I needed 3 for the video, but because I needed 3 for my life. So I stamped 1 for myself to color, 1 for myself to color on camera, and 1 for my little jelly bean to color. So you may notice that the coloring is going by a little quicker than normal, and it's because I already have the actual card completely colored. I did that downstairs. She and I colored together. And I figured if I was going to be coloring, I might as well be coloring something that I actually needed. And it was really, really enjoyable. I'll be honest with you. It was nice to just sit and color. So for the kind of larger sprigs and the bouquet, I did just a kind of true green color, just added a little bit of shading to the base. For the rose leaves, I chose a blue-green. Now, and for some of them, I wanted them to be a little bit darker, the leaves that were kind of like pushed behind. And in order to make them a little bit darker, in that color family, the BG78 is the darkest color. But I am able to use a B99 as my darkest color and then go over it with the blue green, and it gives me some extra depth and dimension, and just reads as kind of like a darker blue green color. The rose leaves are serrated, so I do just add a little bit of darkness kind of where they come in, and that helps to give them a little bit more texture and movement. For the roses, I think roses are one of the flowers that are kind of the most overwhelming for people because there isn't a lot of, there isn't large expanses of area to color, and so it can get really dark and really muddy really quickly. And part of the reason is because there's no, it's really hard to give guidance in coloring a rose because there's so many layers. And it's not just roses, it's like ranunculuses are the same way. different kind of layered flowers. And so that it can be a little bit more challenging, but basically you want to add your darkest shading to where you want the flower to be the darkest, so on the inside or where the petals are meeting. And for that, you want to just do a line of color. So you just want to do a little line. We want to have the tip of the marker barely touching the paper. And then you can go over the darkest, your darker mid-tone, and then your lightest color. Now here, I wanted it to go from kind of like a rose color to like a peachy color, like a rose pink to a peach. So I am going back in with a R02. And this is going to give me kind of like that peachy edges that I am wanting, because I thought that would look really nice with the blue violets that I'm going to use for the lilacs. And so I did lose a little bit of darkness, but you can always go back in with your darker colors and kind of go over that, which I didn't go with my darkest color. I went with my dark mid-tone and just added that in, and I was really happy with the way that the colors looked. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the side view of the rose. Just the lines of the darkest color, and then a line over top of that of my dark mid-tone, line over top of that of my light mid-tone, and then that peach color on just the edges. So, as I was saying, I had to bring this down because it was me and my daughter in the morning. And so I had to take it downstairs, and that's where I was doing the majority of my coloring. Now, with that said, I'm glad the holidays are over for a couple of reasons. One, because it was the first holiday without my mom. So it was just like, we survived our first Halloween, our first Thanksgiving, our first Christmas, our first New Year's. And it was just as excruciating as it sounds. But we made it through. And so I have been trying to, as I go forward, new year, new me, kind of all that jazz. I've been trying to make some better decisions. And one of the things that I have been spending some time doing is trying to make sure that I'm reading my Bible more often. And in this set, when I drew it for the All Things New, one of the sentiments is you make all things new, which is a scriptural quote from Revelations. And that is how I feel heading into 2026. And so I thought that it would be very apt for the first card that we do, for our premiere. So here, let's talk about the blue violets. So I wanted them to have kind of like a lighter and a darker. So I used BVs, which are blue violets, for some of the flowers. Again, we're adding shadows where they're meeting the center, and any place where one object lays on top of the other, or where one is tucked behind another. And then I'm also using some Vs, which are just violets, but they're a very ashy violet. They're a lighter color, but they are not nearly as bright, whereas the BVs start with the 0, and so they are still bright and much more saturated, and I really, really like the combination of the two, especially with that kind of like peachy color. So I'm going to show you just a couple of the flowers. We have the ones on top, and then I'm going to do these ones below, and then I think that, nope, we got to do the yellows. We got to do the yellows. And those we're not going to have very much of. We're just going to have a little bit. So anywho, but I'm also glad that we're into the new year and the holidays are over, because we are now back to our regularly scheduled program. I am blessed enough that I have a job that I really love and enjoy. And I sometimes struggle when we're kind of like all over the place with where, like, who's doing what I love spending time with my family, and being able to, spend time with my kids and my husband. But sometimes it does get a little bit chaotic with, like, is daycare open? Do we have school today? Do we have extracurriculars? Are you going to be home from work? Am I taking? Are you taking? Am I picking up? Are you picking up? And just so it's kind of like a wild time. The holidays are a wild time schedule wise. And so I am looking forward to kind of like settling back into a normal routine. Back to the card. So for this little butterfly up here, I wanted to do like the white stripes. And so I am shading the white part for both butterflies with some cool grays. For the most part, I think I just used a C3 and a C1 for the bodies. I used a C5 and a C7. And then for this butterfly, this rose colored butterfly, I use the C7 to fill in those kind of detail areas on the edges of the wings. Normally, like, because I do prefer really bright colors, I would do black there. But because this kind of vibe of the whole vibe of the card is really subdued, I thought that a darker gray would look nicer there, because we do kind of have these desaturated purples and dusty pinks and, more like it's not a sage per se, but like the desaturated kind of blue greens. And, so having all of those colors in there, I did do a little bit of black for the bee, but you can see it's just like a little teeny tiny bottom part on the belly. The most of him is a C7, and then the highlight is a C5. Now for the yellows, again, I chose less bright yellows than I would normally go with. And so I'm going to do that for the butterfly and the bee. So you can see here, I'm trying to create those visual triangles to create a nice flow. So I have the two butterflies and the bees as the yellows. I'm also going to use the yellows for the little sprigs in the floral bouquet and the centers of the little lilacs. And then I'll create the visual triangle for the dusty pinks with the butterfly and the two sets of roses. For the purple, it's a little bit less like a visual triangle because they're kind of all over the place, but there is still like an odd number of them, which is going to work really nicely for the composition of it. Now, we're 12, 13 minutes in, and we're almost done with all of our coloring. So here, everything is colored. This is what I did downstairs while I was hanging out with my dear sweet daughter. And now I'm going to put some masks over top of the butterflies and the little bee, and then I'm going to do some ink blending. If you're using the die cuts, like if you're die cutting out your butterflies, you don't need the masks at all. You could just do the ink blending first, and then you would, adhere your die cuts over top of it. So for the sky, I am using Salty Ocean, and then towards the top, Mermaid Lagoon. I think that this is super pretty. Now, I used Nancy's Lilac Bouquet. That's a set that I drew for my mother. And so that is also that's also fitting for this card, heading into the new year. But you can use whatever you would like. The Beads and Bonnets also has really great florals, and you could stamp those to build up your garden. I used the pre-built ones because it was just faster. And again, I was trying to stamp this while hanging out with my child. So once I have the ink blending done, I'm going to go ahead and remove those masks. I have on dark nail polish, so I am using my die release tool to help me with that, just to pop those little masks off. And then this card could just be done on its own. But like I told you, I saw that little vellum kind of overlay, and I really wanted to do that. So a couple of things that I learned while I was doing this. First things first, I learned that just running the vellum through the with the 3D embossing folder did cause parts of it to crack, and so that didn't really work out that well for me. Back to what I'm doing here. So I didn't have cardstock that matched the colors that I used. So I just created my own. So for the one on the inside, I used the BG78. And you can see kind of the colors kind of overlap and it's a little bit streaky, but don't worry about it because once you stamp on top of it and then die cut it, you're not going to see any of that anyway. And then the other one, I used the lightest BG from that family. So then I am just going to use that. That's going to be for the front. Here you can see my sweet little angel's hands because we had moved into the craft room together at this point. So she wanted to help me with my things. She's doing a fantastic job treating our paper with the anti-static tool and then stacking up our ink onto our stamps. She's tapping, and then we pressed them down to be able to do our heat embossing. We did stamp them twice, and then for this part I was like, girl, you gotta let mommy do this because heat guns can be dangerous. So I sprinkled on some white detail embossing powder, and then I am going to heat set that and then cut them out with their coordinating dies. So anyway, what were we even talking about? We were talking about jelly bean. So I like going through all of the like the things, and no, we were talking about, girl, keep me on track. What are we doing? The embossing. So I learned that running the embossing folder through with a piece of cardstock behind my vellum helped considerably into cutting down the breaking that I was getting. Here she's helping me line up my little puzzle pieces. So we're lining them up, and then she is going to go in and tape them for me. That is the second one that I colored, and that's what I'm going to take my little butterflies from for the front of the card. So the paper helps to make sure that it doesn't tear through the vellum. The other thing was, originally I was going to do it as like just a whole vellum sheet with the heat embossing, with the 3D embossing. But I kept finding that my vellum was tearing right along the edge of where I wanted to fold it over. I'm highly suspicious it's because my particular folder goes edge to edge. So it was already making those areas thinner. So then once that was not working, and I really wanted the embossing because I felt like it added a lot of interest to the front, then I decided to switch it to a peekaboo window. So that would allow me to do the 3D embossing folder on white cardstock. And then because this particular one has the heart that cuts out the center, I could cut out the center of the white and then put the vellum one behind it, and I wouldn't have to worry about the vellum being the part that held it on because I could add that little side piece to the white. So here we're getting all of our die cutting done. Yes, she helped me with the die cutting, and as she told me when we were doing it, that she has strong muscles and she does not need my help. And I'll be honest with you, she must have really strong muscles because she really didn't need my help. And sometimes it's even hard for me. Sometimes it's even hard for me to get them through the embossing machine. So anyway, now that we have all of those parts done, and you can see she's just playing around with the little stickers. She kept calling the dies cookie cutters, which was totally adorable. But anyway, as I'm sitting here and, doing the voiceover, she is still with me. She is still with me, and she's doing an excellent job of keeping quiet. So this is where we tried time number 1, where I'm trying to get that lined up so I could fold this over top of it. This is the one that I was telling you about. This was my first attempt, and basically it just kept tearing. So I put it on, and then I went to fold it over, and it just kept tearing right along that edge. So then I removed it, and then I came up with plan B. So here's plan B. I originally did the panel for the 3D embossing on the white, but I need a piece that's going to wrap around the back for it to make it that trifold. So I just scored it at about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm using my bone folder. I will have to come back again. We're troubleshooting, right? So I did have to come back and do another score line at well, what is it? 1/4 of an inch. Math is not my strong suit, so I did it at 1/4 of an inch, but then I added another 1/8 of an inch. So it's not a half, it's just shy of a half inch. What is that called? 3/16? Is that what that's called? I don't know. My dad always said that he was amazed that I ended up being able to read a ruler because I struggled so much in school. And I can read them mostly. But anyway, so here I'm just going to adhere this on here, and then this is going to become the flap that wraps around. I have not scored it yet because I didn't know that I needed to. Why did I eventually need to? Oh, side note, I'm showing you this heart like on the vellum to cut that out. That's wrong. That you don't want to cut it out of the vellum. You want to cut it out of the white paper. I'm not really sure what I was thinking there. Because then we'll be able to put the vellum behind it, so that you'll still be able to see through the window, the little peekaboo window. If you wanted to really see through it, you could do acetate, but this is just like a little sneak preview of the little scene that is going to be behind there. And then I just adhered this with my regular honeybee glue. You could also use a dry adhesive if you're more comfortable with that. So when I did this, this is like I added the vellum there, and then I'm going to put the adhesive, which I use dry adhesive and liquid adhesive, so that they would line up, like they would be easier if I needed to move them around like a little boo-boo, which I frequently have with dry adhesive. I need that little bit of wiggle room that liquid adhesive gives me. And this is when I realized that it just wasn't going to line up. So here's my dry adhesive going down. You want to leave your sheets on until this second part is done. So now here is where I am scoring it again. I'm using my Spellbinders, one because it has a scoring, it's not a blade, what is it, a scoring attachment. And then here you'll see it's like almost turns it into like a little book. There is like a little side edge, and this is because I needed that to reach to all the way over to the edge of the card. And every time I tried to put the card in without that little gap, it kept pushing it so that it wasn't lining up, and I had like this huge gap that on the right hand side. I also should note the blue portion, like with the part that has the actual coloring on, has already been glued to an A2 card. I guess I cut that out, which I apologize. So that's already been, you want to glue your scene to an A2 card, and then you'll use the wraparound of the 3D embossing to turn it into that trifold. And then once you get it where you want it, and you have that little edge so that everything sits in there really nicely, then you'll just want to burnish that with your bone folder to make sure everything's stuck together really well. Here I laid my sentiment on the top so that I could get everything how I wanted it around there, and then I glued my butterflies. I added some shimmer to my butterflies inside and outside. I also added it to my flowers because I love the shimmer and I want to put it on everything. And then I used my white gel pen just to add a couple of little highlights to my butterflies, to my little bees' wings. And then it's funny because I'm still using the holiday set, even though I didn't mean to. This is the Holiday Wishes. It's got this really nice, like, rosy pink color, and I used that to accent my sentiment, and then that's it. That's the whole trifold card. So I struggled, so you didn't have to. So hopefully you'll be able to make something similar without as much struggle as I had. But anyway, this is a new year. And I am wishing you all the joy and beauty and growth and happiness that your heart can hold. And like I'm excited for us to start some new things. So thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.